Hello and welcome back to Anime Max. Izuku Midoriya within the anime has begun his plummet into a far darker place than ever. And taking from the manga, let me tell you that he has transformed to the point that his outer look has altered in an alarming way, making people wonder if he ever was a hero to begin with. And this is all as a result of All For One's recent cascade of hideous actions. So today let's discuss Dark Deku in detail. How a once innocent hero transitioned into such a vigilante. But before we do, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot to us and helps us grow. Done? Well, let's begin. Midoriya's transformation into Dark Deku was unquestionably one of the most interesting developments in My Hero Academia. It's uncommon in shonen like MHA to have a pure, naive, bright-spirited hero suddenly embrace dark tendencies, along with taking on a gloomy appearance. And that's exactly what's made Dark Deku so creative in the first place. Midoriya, or Dark Deku, not only ignored and brushed aside his beloved mentor and hero, All Might, but he had transformed to the extent that also made people wonder if he was a Nomu. People actually used to be surprised when they realized that he was actually there to save them. So let's recall what plunged Midoriya into this ugly darkness and what saved him when he was on the front line alone, ready to sacrifice everything he knows and owns for the people he loves, even if it meant being a vigilante. We had the war arc, of course, which was full of exciting surprises and character growth from week to week. But by the end of the arc, All For One had taken control of Shigaraki's body. However, as Deku sees Shigaraki in the vestige world getting consumed by All For One, he notices that Shigaraki's face appears to be screaming for help. This achieved two things. It first established Deku's aim to save Shigaraki, not to beat him up in a fight, but to get him on his side. Second, it allowed Deku to observe really close how All For One manipulates others, deepening his hatred for him. Now, hate is not a strong enough word for what Deku was feeling for All For One at this point in time. These events created the groundwork for Dark Deku and his vigilante arc. Following this, we witnessed the Tartaru's prison break, which had major consequences for the rest of Japan as the unexpected entrance of hundreds of convicts shocked the nation, which had only just begun to respond to the havoc wreaked by the Gigantomachia the previous afternoon. Many heroes would resign as a result of these occurrences. With fewer heroes than ever before, Japan entered a new dark period in which society lost trust in its heroes, and the criminals now dominated, with no place safe from escaped convicts and their frightening quirks. Before even the most powerful heroes could respond to the chaos, one man chose to step up. During this time, this guy became a legend, despite the fact that he could not be recognized owing to the smoke that seemed to emerge from his body as he overworked with the entire burden on his shoulders to safeguard the streets of Japan and its residents in their hour of need. He was Japan's greatest ally, yet tales lingered about this mystery character at the time, with some claiming that if you saw him, you wouldn't be able to determine if he really was a hero at all. This man was none other than our very own Izuku Midoriya. This was Dark Deku. Dark Deku was the result of his outfit deteriorating over time and the weight of believing he was the only one capable of defeating All For One, both of which had a negative impact on his mental state. Deku had fallen into a deep sleep after the battle as a result of the injuries he acquired during the brutal combat against Shigaraki. The narrative of Midoriya leaving UA to become a vigilante follows shortly. Midoriya laid in the hospital bed recovering from his wounds on a cold day following My Hero Academia's war arc. All Might sits at his side, and no one else is allowed in while the other Class 1A students begin to awaken from their injuries, but there is still no news on Deku. During this combat, Midoriya sustained some of the most severe injuries in the whole class, yet his coma isn't only due to his wounds. Inside, Deku is talking with several users of One For All from the past to discuss the origins of One For All and All For One's Shigaraki's objectives and what Deku wants to do when all is said and done. When Deku eventually wakes up from coma, the world was significantly different from the one he'd always known, and it was his obligation as the successor of All Might, the emblem of peace, to make things right. At least in his opinion, All Might was comparable to Deku in that he sacrificed himself for the sake of others during his career. Deku has exhibited this trait since the beginning. Deku would begin his transformation arc and his facial expression would only get more and more gloomy from this point on. What is apparent is that seeing his friends in such horrible conditions sparked his transformation, and that emotion was contrary to what he experienced as Dark Deku. Deku discovers that everyone, including his mother and all of his classmates, were locked up at UA. Finding that Shigaraki has fled and All for One is now loose, Deku realizes Shigaraki still has the search quirk, which may be used at any moment to identify Deku's whereabouts with ultimate accuracy. If Shigaraki arrives at the shelter, this will put his mother and everyone else in extreme danger because Shigaraki can use his quirk to decay the entire town in brief seconds. This is where Deku makes the ultimate choice that he can't come back to UA anymore. To bid farewell, he writes a number of letters for Class 1A telling them about his decision. As the last bearer of One for All, he swears to safeguard their smiles, but claims he will no longer be a part of their class. Deku visits Gran Torino, who is still in his hospital bed healing from his wounds. Gran Torino hands Deku his cape, which is like passing the torch to a student. Deku accepts it and prepares himself by donning his bloody and ripped battle arc outfit, new arm bracers, and his old gloves from previous seasons. As he slings his cape over his shoulder and stares out into the chaotic Japanese streets, he prepares himself for what will be a long and difficult journey as a vigilante. Deku is seen walking towards the city on his own. The path of the vigilante was mandatory because One for All is the only way of countering All for One. Therefore, Deku knew All for One would do anything to eliminate his only threat, which is Deku himself. So if he is at the UA with the people he loves, undoubtedly they would be sucked into the conflict with All for One. By staying at UA, he would be turning other people into cannon fodder. He departs to keep them away from All for One, assuming that he will not assault locations if Deku is not around. But this isn't the end of Deku's willingness to break ties with those he cares about. You will soon see that he quickly proves that he is not in need of All Might either, with the insane part being that he says that to his face. The surprising declaration comes after a series of bad and quite unpleasant incidents that appear to have had a significant impact on our young hero. Next up, Vigilante Deku's fight with Muscular was a milestone in his development. It demonstrated how far Izuku has progressed from the boy who blew up at a training bot at the cost of breaking every bone he had to the ultimate personification of a hero. He has discovered how to utilize One for All true power without injuring his arms. He could now go tenfold past his limit. It was a defining moment in Midoriya's transformation. You can tell that from the fact that he went plus ultra for the very first time throughout the series. Coupled with that, Midoriya helped someone, although there was no need for him to intervene. He embraces the real spirit of self-sacrifice as any true hero would, and saves Koda, who couldn't have defended himself from the likes of Muscular. Not only that, but he altered Koda's view of heroes. He presented them to Koda with a fresh and improved perspective. We got a taste of what he'll be capable of when he ultimately becomes the world's greatest hero, when he struck Muscular with a 1,000,000% punch. Right after his fight with Muscular, he gets no rest and goes on to save an innocent girl who is getting attacked by civilians. This incident demonstrates some of the still unsolved quirk-based racism in My Hero Academia's world, but that's what his transformation arc revolves around. Deku has never had the opportunity to get to know the individuals who live on the streets he patrols. Now, he's learning about the many problems that people encounter, and that even while he's working to defend them, not everyone he's attempting to protect is fundamentally nice. It's important to note that up to this point, All Might was clinging onto Deku 24/7 while he was trying to avoid him at all costs. All Might even prepared a meal for Deku, because it's not like he's going to return to UA to eat, or casually check in at a nearby McDonald's, although Deku accepted the meal and ran off quickly afterwards to somewhere he could be alone. Not much later, restless Deku meets Lady Nagant. He recalls Hawk's remarks from when they were getting ready to depart when he informed Deku that since he is extremely powerful in most scenarios, even if he is alone, he should be okay. But Hawks was concerned about one person. Deku is instructed to run immediately if he becomes involved with this person. But now she stood in front of him and there was no way of contacting anybody. Deku decided to face her head on and manages to get close to her, but it's of no use. With no other option left, he uses Talk no Jutsu to get her to reveal her story. Deku, who is already depressed by the state of society, gets absolutely shocked to hear that she was used as a tool by heroes as well as villains. She was sent on missions as a hero that were merely for fame and fortune, and innocents were killed. Deku admits that although he wasn't aware of any of that, he no longer sees the world as black and white. He wants to fix all the pain that was swept under the rug by society. In the end, it becomes apparent that Lady Nagant still had a soul of a hero and never even intended to kill Deku. However, it seems All For One was one step ahead as Nagant self-detonates as her hatred disappears. After this traumatic event, Deku leaves even All Might behind to work on his own. This is known as True Deku's Vigilante Age, in which he is literally a one-man army with no friends. Despite acting alone as a vigilante, Deku is nonetheless a legally certified pro-hero though. Deku struggles to face the next assassin while deprived of food and sleep, but is interrupted as Class 1A butts in to take him home. He resists them and warns them not to get involved in a dispute that isn't theirs. It's all for one versus one for all. Class 1A, on the other hand, is not one to back down. They all know he's different from everyone else because his desire to save others stems from years of dreaming about being a hero, while knowing he'd never have the chance. So when the opportunity arises, he seizes it and never lets go. When he loses his way during his transformation storyline and starts averting into a state where he thinks he needs to do it all alone, Ochako and the rest of the class remind Deku that when everyone comes together to put their efforts towards a single aim, even an impossible fantasy can become possible. Even defeating All For One can become a reality. A heartfelt conversation with Bakugo and Ochako's speech to the civilians make Deku realize that he doesn't have to fight alone and that society's perspective can be changed. And this marks his return. Well, that was it for today's video. If you liked it, please leave us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell icon so you're notified of the latest updates. With that said, see you in the next one. Peace.